probably rehearsed this in your head enough, huh?
I've thought about it some,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I know a little bit about you. You were in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go to basic training at?
At San Diego,
Yeah,
MCRD San Diego.
Do you remember your first day boot camp?
Oh, wow.
Was it putting your feet on those yellow things or whatever?
Off the bus in a big rush and get your feet on those yellow footprints, you maggots. Yeah. Yeah.
What year did you go to basic training?
August 1963.
Oh, 63.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Vietnam wasn't really even going, was it?
No, we were just there at that time in the advisory capacity.
So why did
quote unquote?
Why did you join?
I joined at the request of the judicial system.
Okay. And you were how old then?
17.
So were you prepared for what was ahead? I mean.
Oh, absolutely not. Green farm kid, naive to the max. It was a real eye opener.
So you get into basic training. I mean, war is not happening right at that moment, but were the drill instructors preparing you for combat and all that?
I think everybody knew that it was coming to that, so yeah, they were pushing towards combat training pretty heavily. 63, 64. When I got out of boot camp and into my unit, we trained pretty heavily. But of course, the Marine Corps in their backwards way, we were training desert warfare and cold weather training and not doing anything towards jungle training.
What was your MOS? What was your job in the Marines?
Primary job was radio operator with an artillery unit. I was FO, forward observer, radio operator.
So this is 63. In 64, where were you? I mean, when did you go to Vietnam?
We left for Vietnam when they mobilized the entire 1st Marine Division off of Camp Pendleton in the summer of 1965. They took like 30,000 troops and just moved them. You know, we went to San Diego, boarded ships, steamed to Okinawa, refitted, redistributed on ships, and then headed for Vietnam from there.
So at that point, you guys were deployed as a group. As the years went by, it seemed like they went individually, didn't they?
Yeah, we were the first big group going in, of course, the first mobilization for combat troops. And then after that, it was a 13-month rotate for the Marines.
So when you went over to Vietnam, where did you end up being stationed? Where was your base?
Our base of operations was Phu Bai, about, I don't know, 30, 40 miles north of Da Nang, something.
Do you remember
just south of Hue.
Do you remember what month this was that you went over there?
We pulled out of Camp Pendleton in August. We hit Okinawa 21 days later, spent a couple of weeks there, regrouping, redistributing on different ships. The unit I was with, the infantry unit I was assigned to, drew battalion landing team duty. They loaded us up on 4 boats and convoyed us up and down the coast of Vietnam as a strike force for hot spots. And they moved us in when they were first building Phu Bai, the base at Phu Bai. They sent us into the north off of the boats to patrol the perimeter around the north area of the base while the Seabees were constructing the base there. We spent a few weeks up there kind of just S&D and traipsing through the brush.
Search and destroy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, you're there for a year, right?
Right.
And you're a radio operator, forward observer. Was that like a point man, or I mean, what were you calling artillery fire, or what?
We were the eyes for the artillery, attached out with the infantry. So the FO team, 2-3 guys from the artillery with the artillery band radio would go out with the grunts to support them, you know, when they were out on their search and destroys. We'd set up night fires and call for strikes if combat happened, when it happened. In those years, it was a lot of just humping, mindless humps, nothing happening, you know. You'd walk for 10, 12 clicks a day, 15 day in, day out, and then all of a sudden you'd take a few sniper rounds, people would drop, and then you'd march for another 2, 3, 4 days, with nothing happening.
Did you get into any heavy engagements, or was it all pretty sporadic like
Pretty
that?
sporadic in those
The whole
years.
tour was like that pretty
Yes,
much?
for me. Mm-hmm.
What was the most difficult engagement? Do you remember? Or was there one? The sniper fire or whatever, being pinned down, or any stories?
Several times we were stuck in the open, more or less, with a rice paddy dike between you and them, and a lot of open ground to cover to get out. We were pinned down a couple of times, but by 1 or 2 snipers, not massive forces. And there wasn't any real major long battles like Tet or the fire bases up north in the late 60s. It wasn't anything like that in those days.
So was this the Viet Cong you were fighting?
Mostly the Cong. Occasionally we'd come across an NVA unit, but mostly the Cong we were dealing with.
And how would you describe them as far as their skills or as soldiers or whatever? I mean, or could you tell who they were even? I mean,
for a young kid fresh off the farm, it was totally different. I mean, it wasn't the combat that we'd been trained for. The hit and run, the snipers, the night incursions around the perimeter of your base, or night position if you were out on patrol. And you didn't know who they were. They were the woodcutters, walking along with a bundle of sticks on their back and a couple of rifles in it. Walk right past you, get off in the distance someplace, turn around, take the rifle out, take a couple shots at you. You didn't know who you were fighting.
was there an image of the Marines when you went in, even during your training? I mean, World War II image. I mean, it was the pride, the tradition, the Marine Corps. Iwo Jima, Korea, and then you get into Vietnam. You're in a different. Did you kind of get a little disillusioned with who the Marine was, or was it always that pride always there?
I think, especially with the Marine Corps, I think the pride is always there. You get a little disappointed, I suppose, if you've trained hard. I didn't, because I didn't really want to see the combat. I don't mind telling you, I was afraid.
That's all right. They tell you if you're not afraid, you're lying.
Yeah. And if you're not afraid, you do crazy things and you wake up dead. So, fear is a good thing.
So were you, you've been in the Corps a couple of years, you're in Vietnam, there was probably guys there, they just come in the Corps and they're there, right? Or are they all...
The ones that I was with in Vietnam were all pretty much ones I'd gone through basic and training at Pendleton and everything with. They hadn't started rotating in the new guys yet. We were about the first to rotate out. So
what's the mood of the Marines at that time in the country as a whole? I mean, this is the beginning of Vietnam, and what's the mood in the,
we were there to kick butt, destroy communism, kill the Viet Cong. That was our job, and we took it seriously at first. Well, always, I think, but at first especially, it was we couldn't wait to get off base, get out of the base camp, get out on patrol, find them, and then it started dawning on you that you could look forever and not find them. You only found them when they came to you. So.
Incoming.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying, as you talk, the people that are listening, I try to imagine, what you're seeing and hearing, going through. But are you conscious of fighting for your country when you're there, or is it more of a matter of survival?
Oh, no. No, it was for God and country and mother's apple pie. Yeah.
How about the camaraderie of the guys that you're with? I mean, I know the Marines are a pretty tight group.
Yeah, we are. I think the closeness was good. You had your personal little Friday night spats, sibling rivalry even to the point. But for the most part, it was a very tight-knit, close group. And that was really before that time was before all the racism in the military and all of that kind of stuff, you know, so it didn't really much matter who you were part of the group, you were part of the family. So
They say once a Marine, always a Marine. Is that true?
oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. There's no ex-Marines. I mean,
No.
you know.
Former active duty Marines.
How did the military change you from as a person? I mean, good, bad? I mean, how did it change you over the years and even to
Well,
this day?
Had it not been for going in the active Marines at that time, I'd probably wound up in jail. I was headed down the wrong road. So the Marine Corps was the best thing that ever happened to me. And obviously it made enough of an impression when I got out of active duty and out of college and got on the job. I went back in the reserves for another 12 years, you know, to be a part of the military. So it was, it still means something to me. It's an honorable profession.
Give me some more about your tour over there. You said it was you'd go out there in the day, not much happening. I mean, are you in the jungle? Is it hot? I mean, what's?
It was mixed, mostly around Fubai. It was a lot of rice paddies. Occasionally you'd get into some heavy wooded areas, but just mindless humps. Just loading up with half your body weight on your back and walking for 10 miles, you know, and doing nothing, going nowhere, slipping, sliding in the mud. We were there, we first got there in the winter, monsoons, heavy rains and all. And then when it started getting hot, it really got hot. And the winter, November, October, for 50 degrees, amazingly cold. It was wet, soggy, you never really dried out. Pretty miserable existence.
Can you just tell me what a rice paddy is? Describe it.
It's a wheat field covered with water where they grow rice. You know, it's foot and a half, 2 foot of deep paddy, dikes around it to hold the water in that they planted their rice in. So they're farming, and they were anywhere from a couple acres in size to 10 acres in size. You know, some of them pretty large.
So tell me the group, the division you're with, the company, battalion, or whatever.
I was with the 11th Marines, the artillery unit, and of course, being an FO, I was attached out to the infantry, so I was away from the battery most of the time. I was out with different infantry units, the 7th Marines, the 9th, the 4th, you know, just whatever infantry unit was out on patrol at that time, they'd called back to the battery area and get one of the FO teams to go out with them.
So you're calling in support as you need it? Somebody's
Right.
telling you
Right.
this information?
Well, the company commander, you know, would take in some incoming rounds or sniper fire or something, and he'd say, "Can you put a couple of rounds out there where that sniper is?" So we'd plot it, call the battery, and get a couple of artillery rounds out there to disorient them or kill them as we could.
And you carry a weapon at the time too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. At that time, the T-only weapon for a radio operator was a .45 caliber pistol, but they're pretty much hand-launched missiles. You throw it at them. So when it didn't take very long for us to those of us that carried .45s to go on the local market and buy a weapon, an M2 carbine or something that we could with a little more reach-out power. So supposedly the infantry would protect you because, of course, you're protecting them, but you never like to leave that job totally to somebody else. You know.
Do Marines question why? I mean, I don't think you do, but I mean, why you were there? Were you guys? I mean, what was the purpose? What was in your mind your purpose of being in Vietnam?
At the request of the President of the United States, that's your job. No, we didn't question it. We were.
What was the threat, do you think, to our country at that time?
I didn't have a clue at that time. I was, like I say, quite naive.
That's probably good,
of course,
though.
it was drilled into us that the threat of communism and North Vietnam was taking the quote democratic South Vietnam over, and we had to stop that incursion. So that was our mission.
And how over the years does the American public lose sight of that? Or, you know, I don't think they did it on their own, but I mean, how does the country, it seemed like a lot of the country would just lose their focus of why we were there. Even like today, you know, it's like, you know, what are we doing over there?
I don't think the country ever really got it to begin with. Right from the beginning, there were the protesters and the those that said we didn't belong there. And I don't know, maybe we didn't, but we were told to go, so you went, you know. Not yours to reason why.
But to do and die?
Simply but to do or die, yeah. I don't think, and of course, with the unpopularity of the war, the protests back here in the States and everything, the troops during that time and on their return weren't well received, to say the least. I had quite an interesting occurrence when I got back to the States and was flying out of LAX. A little white-robed parishioner got in my face, and it was the wrong thing to do. I got to be the guest of the airport up in the security lounge until my plane left. Had to separate me from the general population, I guess.
Ira, what was the worst thing that happened to you during that tour, or the worst thing that you saw?
Oh, several. We were out on patrol one day, a small patrol, a couple of squads, 20 guys, something. And we were going to be out 3 or 4 days. We took some sniper fire from a village, a group of huts, 4 or 5 huts. So we advanced on it, and we got there. The sniper fire, of course, had quit, so we continued to advance and got into the center area in the huts, and there was a baby laying in the middle of the yard, all bound up in blankets and stuff. And when one of our guys went over to pick it up, took him out.
Was that a guy in your squad?
Well, one of the infantrymen that we were attached with. We never really got to know any of the people that we worked with very well.
Why is that?
Except because we were always out with different
okay.
units, you know.
Was that a lesson learned? I mean, obviously you don't do that again. I mean,
Well,
I've heard stories where babies were used as booby traps or whatever. I mean,
it was an immediate eye opener that they looked at combat very differently than we did. We played sort of by some rules, and the only rule they played by was no rules. So, yeah, it was a wake-up call. And that kind of thing happened, I think, to every one of us that was over there in some way or another. That first realization that this is different. This isn't World War II. This isn't line against line. This isn't tank against tank. It's different. So, yeah, I think all of us went through that initial wake-up at some point in our tour.
and tell me about the uncertainty of Vietnam. Was there a lot of uncertainty?
Well, never knowing, you know, yeah, there was. You never knew. There was no front lines. There was no definite target. There was no mission or objective. It was at any point, any time, anywhere. I like to coin a phrase from MASH from time to time where it says, where Hawkeye was talking, he says, this is weeks and months of sheer unadulterated boredom, interrupted by moments of sheer terror. And that's what it was. You go along for days and days and days and days, and then all of a sudden people just start dropping. Jeez. You know. And of course, being a radio operator, you were, that antenna sticking up there, you was a favorite target. You know, they wanted to stop communications, of course, and that antenna was just pointing at you. Shoot me, you know.
Tell me about any times where you had to call in helicopters for medevacs or for support, or did you have to do that at all?
No, that wasn't my job. As artillery, the company commander, the infantry people had their own radio.
Was that
network.
a common sound though, the helicopters where you were at, or just maybe every once in a while?
Just once in a while. Early years like that, the combat just wasn't there. You know, I mean, and most of the time you were never more than a few clicks from base camp. And in that terrain, there were some roads, ox trails, that they could get ground vehicles to in a short amount of time. So, and we didn't have the helicopters. The Marines were still flying the old CH-19s, Sigorskis, and very few of those. They hadn't really brought in the Hueys in any great numbers, you know, or helicopters of any kind in any great numbers. So.
Did you guys carry around the short term, the calendars, marking down the days? Did you guys ever keep track of all that?
I don't know that I ever did, until it got down within the last couple of weeks. Then, of course, you did your short timers calendar, yeah. But
so after that year in Vietnam, I mean, are you cynical? Are you optimistic? I mean, how are you feeling at the end of that tour? Go back and do it again, or?
Would have, yeah. Angry. I guess that's probably the best way to say it. I was angry at coming back to what we came back to. So I had a chip for quite a while.
So you came out of there in 65 or 66?
I got out of there in 66, summer of 66. They trucked us from Phu down to Da Nang at the airport there, and they loaded 70, 80 of us on a Northwest or Northeast Orient airliner, flew us out of Da Nang, touched down in Hawaii, refuel. They wouldn't even let us off the plane. They just touched her down, topped her off, and sent it on to El Toro, California. And we spent 2-3 days there drawing back pay and cleaning up uniforms and getting rearranged so that you could go on your leave, you know.
Back in Vietnam, though, that tour, I mean, were there friends of yours that were killed or wounded, or were you ever able to help somebody that was wounded, or was that just the medics that did all that?
Pretty much the medics. I got shot once in the chest. Wasn't a $1 million wound, you know, just a stray bullet took a little chunk out of the chest here and out the back of my arm, you know. Sent me to the aid station, give me a couple of aspirins, put a Band-Aid on it. Light duty for a couple of weeks and back to work. Yeah. But no, I never really got involved in anything extremely blood and gore.
What about just your training and being there and, you know, getting through that time mentally? I mean, does it take a toll on you? And what was the conversation at night with the other guys, or what are your thoughts at night?
I think in those days we were still the esprit de corps, you know. There wasn't any real negativism going on around at night. If you were out on patrol, you still had your job. You were 2 on, 2 off during the night. So what little time you had to sleep, you slept. When you was awake, or when you was supposed to be awake, you better be. But back at base camp, you know, you drink a few beers, BS, play a few cards, go to bed. You know, there wasn't any real I don't know that there was any real closeness there with the guys. I don't know if it was intentional or it just happened that way. I don't think I intentionally avoided people, but always was in the back of your mind, do I really want to get too close? Yeah. Yeah, that thought occurred, I think, to most of us.
When you said you were scared, I mean, are you scared of dying or just being over in a foreign area?
Afraid of not knowing, afraid of the unknown, yeah. Afraid of dying, afraid of when it could happen, when it's going to happen, yeah.
That's something you think about.
Oh, yeah.
Were you,
Doesn't happen often, but when the bullets start flying, you think, I'm mortal. I'm not 6 foot tall and bulletproof. Yeah. Even as a naive kid, you realize that. Mm-hmm.
Did you pray back then, or did you have faith in
I
God
was-
back then, or what?
I had always been raised pretty much in a religious atmosphere, but I wasn't particularly active in any church at that time. Chaplain would come around. We get to see a chaplain once a month for a service, and that was about it. Yeah. Fortunately, I was never placed in a position where it was, oh God, please save me. I wasn't in that position. I'm sure I would have if I had been, But
Were you glad to get out of there when you did leave?
yeah, I was. I stayed a month or so longer than some of the guys that I went in with, just to allow them time to rotate other people in. But a lot of the guys that I went in with were out of there in July, and I stayed the full 12, or 13 actually.
When you got back home, was it hard transitioning back? Well, you stayed in the Marine Corps, right? You were still in the Marine Corps?
I still had about a year left, yes.
So it wasn't maybe as drastic of a contrast as a lot of these guys.
That came back and got out immediately and hit the streets. No, I was still in the military environment for about a year after I got back to the States.
Did you have a chance to go back to Vietnam, or was that?
No, I was out of time, and I wasn't about to re-enlist
Yeah.
at that time. I just wanted out.
I mean, when you get out, the war's still going. What did you go do, and what were your thoughts about the war at that time?
I got married, started a family, went back to college, used my GI Bill to go to college on, and living in Boise at the time, they had a big National Guard base there, Gowan Field, reserve training base. And they had some full-time positions, military positions there, but you had to be in the Guard to apply for those positions, in the maintenance shops and whatever. So I enlisted in the Guard and applied for one of those jobs. Never did get one, and just stayed in the Guard and Reserve program for quite a few years after that.
And as the years go by, I mean, to the end of the war, I mean, you're supportive of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I started to question why a little bit as I matured some, but you didn't really question the authority that sent you there or sent any of the troops there. I supported that activity. It was obviously the president's decision to do this, and he's better advised than I am, so who am I to question? And that's just the Marine Corps way.
That's good.
You don't question, you simply do.
So you come back home, you're starting a family, and then did you talk about Vietnam at all? For
a very long time.
No, you didn't.
No.
Why is that?
I suppose I couldn't deal with it myself. Didn't want to talk about it.
So what about Vietnam, Ira, bothers you or did bother you? I mean, just the fact that you were there, or some of the memories, or what?
A lot of the memories. A lot of what I saw that I'm still not comfortable with.
Well, I think there's a part of combat that everybody's going to take to the grave. They're
Well-
never going to talk about, and they don't need to, you know. But well, how would you define combat?
I don't understand the question, I guess.
Just, I mean, your definition of combat.
Well, what I was taught in basic training was the laying down on two sides of a field, shooting at each other, or attacking, or, you know, we'd been trained some urban tactics back then, certainly not what they're going through today, I'm sure. But combat was two lines of soldiers approaching each other. It wasn't what we saw there. It was the digging them out of the ground, the trying to determine, were those just silk underwear or were they black pajamas, you know, and is that woodcutter really just a woodcutter, or is he, does he have an RPG in that stack of wood, you know, that he's carrying? It wasn't anything like what I expected, for sure.
And after having talked with so many World War II veterans, and even in Korea, it's like things changed from one war to the other, and there's not your traditional conventional warfare there.
Even Korea was traditional, conventional to a very large degree, and most of the NCOs that we had, the staff sergeants and gunnies and everything, were all Korean War vets. I'm sure it was an adjustment for them too. You know, this was a whole different ball game. Their position, of course, to train their troops, to take them into combat, keep them alive, keep them supplied, and it was so totally different. I'm sure it was an adjustment for them, without a doubt.
Any napalm strikes during your tour, or was Agent Orange even introduced at that time? Or
We got in on some Agent Orange right at the end of my tour, going through an area that had been sprayed with it, and it was kind of a sticky, stinky mess. You know, I don't know if it ever really accomplished what they hoped it would. We did use some white phosphorus and some napalm to clear out vegetation around a suspected area. Certainly wasn't using it on troops, but to clear out vegetation, we called in a few of those, a few napalm strikes.
yeah, do you have any pictures of yourself back during Vietnam? A graduation picture from Marine Corps? Or
Yeah,
basic
I
training?
think I give you some of those.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You did. You did.
Mhm.
Okay, so I've got
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. You know, when you look at those pictures, I don't know if you even got them. I mean, did I get back to you yet? Okay. You need to remind me to do that. But anyways, when you see yourself back then, I mean, are these fading memories, Ira, or does it seem like yesterday sometime?
Fortunately, they're fading. Yeah. I can look at some of the pictures of that young guy and say, who the heck is he? You know, to me at least, I look totally different. Some people age and kind of carry the same. It seems like my nose got bigger, my hair started receding, and, you know, I'm not 130 pounds anymore, and I'm just way different. Yeah. So I can look back and say, boy, what a kid. What a naive little kid. Yeah.
You've heard me ask this question through the documentaries, but I'm going to ask you too, Ira. What does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom is pretty much the God-given right to be able to, within the laws of the land, come and go as you please. It's a commodity worth fighting for.
What would you tell a young person today who was born in a free country, who knows really nothing about freedom, about the price or the cost to protect those freedoms? What would you tell them?
The freedom that they're enjoying right now was paid for with a lot of blood. The saying that freedom is not free is true. I'm having a tough time with this. I don't know if you're going to be able to use much of it.
Oh, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
I just want you to relax. I mean, you know, there's nothing rehearsed about this
No.
at all. But let's see. As far as you know, I don't think our young people. I don't know how you can really get it across to them. Like you said, a lot of blood was shed. But I mean, do you have to vividly show them, or I don't really know how to reach them with that message.
I don't know that graphic and approach would even work.
Yeah.
But and you're right. I don't know how to convey that very well.
What about the flag, the American flag? What does that mean and represent to you as a veteran?
It's worth dying for. I have one out in front of my house that flies day and night. And when they get a little ragged, why, I take them down and take them out and honorably discharge them and put a new one up.
Do you think our country is losing that spirit of patriotism?
I don't think. I think certain factions of our country are. I still believe, maybe because I'm the optimist, but I still believe that the majority of the country is patriotic. They know the value of freedom, and they're willing to do what's necessary to keep that. I mean, you just have to look around. I guess one way to tell the kids, have them look at like Darfur or you know, some countries in South America that don't have the freedom. Where's that Chavez guy from? Argentina or wherever, you know, that don't have it. Cuba don't have it. We could be in that situation. We're not, fortunately. We have the freedom to live a good life and achieve goals. We're not repressed.
Now, have you ever been to the Vietnam Wall in Washington?
No, I haven't.
Ever care to go there, or?
Maybe someday.
How about the one here in Fruita? You ever been to Fruita, the one out here?
Yeah, I have. I was out there the day of dedication.
What was that like? What did you experience?
It was unreal. I guess that whole dedication thing, they were expecting like 3,000 or 4,000 people to show up, and in excess of 10 did. It was quite an occasion.
How'd they get them all out there? It's a small little area.
Yeah. You parked quite a ways away and walked. Yeah, but it was quite a ceremony. They had the Navajo code talkers there, and the whole dedication. Quite a group of celebrities to dedicate it. It was one of the highlights. I think was they released an eagle, and the eagle took off and soared around a few times. The symbol of freedom.
You've seen my Vietnam film. I mean, when you watched that for the first time, I mean, you're hearing these guys talk about these things. Could you relate to their stories?
Yeah, I could. You know, I think all of us that were there experienced differently. The experience was different for us, but we all have a certain camaraderie, a certain the activities that we were involved in were very much similar. I mean, right down to the field chow halls and the field showers, and you know, when we got back to Phu Bai, it was one of the few times that we had a chance for any hygiene, so to speak, other than helmet baths. They had big water bladders set up out there with the gas heaters that, you know, you'd get a almost warm shower, and real soap and real food, you know. Although I got quite fond of seas. I didn't mind them at all. People would be trading away the lima beans. I felt quite a taste for them.
Did you have friends that were wounded or killed in Vietnam that you knew?
Didn't really have friends other than the people that I was with, and no, I didn't really know
How about
anybody.
people from back home that went over there? Did they all come back, or I mean, that you knew?
I don't know. When I left home, went into the military. When I got out of the military, I moved to a totally different area. I kind of stayed in touch with Mom and Dad and the brothers and sisters, but nobody else in the community.
Now, were you shaking your head? Yes, he knew somebody. Who?
Correct.
Who's that? Can I ask? Friend? Family?
A guy I was in boot camp with, served with in Vietnam.
Did he go overseas with you too? Yeah. Do you think about him like during maybe a certain time of year, or Veterans Day, or what?
Try not to.
Yeah.
One of those places you avoid.
Are you proud that you're a Vietnam veteran, Ira?
Yes, I am. I was called, and I served. I did it with honor. I did it out of respect for my country and the president. Yeah, I'm proud of it.
Would you do it again if you had to?
Quite frankly, I would, because of all my years of experience. Another conflict come along, I would rather go than the young kids that don't know yet. Yeah. Yeah, I would.
Have people thanked you over the years for your service?
Occasionally.
How does that make you feel when they do that?
Makes me tear up.
Do you feel like what you did was significant, or had a meaning and was worthwhile?
I don't know about that. Yeah, I think if nothing more than to help hold the country together, it was worthwhile. Did we accomplish our mission in Vietnam? No. Could it have ever been accomplished? Probably not. At the way we were trying to do it, wouldn't have worked. Did we, like today, keep the terrorists out of the United States? No, they couldn't have got here anyway. But yeah, I think there's still some value in it.
Have you talked to your family at all about your what you did in Vietnam, or have you talked much about it before with them, or are they interested in knowing, or what?
Well, I'm sure they would be. We're not a close family. Mm-hmm. We see each other every couple of years. We talk on the phone from time to time. I'm sure they would want to know, perhaps. Just hasn't been the opportunity.
When we first talked about being interviewed, it took a while to get to this day, but I mean, what were your thoughts initially, and then even last night or today as far as talking? I mean, how'd you feel about it?
Mixed. I wasn't sure I wanted to. Wasn't sure what to say. Wasn't sure. I guess uncertainty is the word of the day. was interested, wanted to contribute if I had something to contribute, of course. If I could, if some of what I said connected with somebody else, sure.
What would you say to a brother, another Vietnam vet? I mean, if you could say something to them today, what would you say to them?
Just semper fi, keep the faith. We did what we thought was right. So, regardless of what anybody else thinks, we're okay.
Are there sights, sounds, or smells that bring back Vietnam to you today?
Oh, sure.
Like what?
Oh, like we were just talking a while ago, choppers. Loud noises still kind of startle me from time to time. One of the operations that I was on was they had found a good-sized NVA unit in an area, bivouacked, and they bombed it. And we had to go in a couple of days later and search the bodies for intelligence. Of course, temperatures and a couple of days, and it was pretty foul. And believe it or not, occasionally you go by a barbecue wagon, you know, these, or a rib joint or something, and it kind of makes you want to lay off meat for a while, you know. Yeah, there are a few sounds and smells that positively affect me and adversely, too.
Do you think it helps to talk about some of this stuff, or?
Sure. Sure it does. I did my couch time at the VA shrinks, and it helped me get a little bit in perspective, but it's still difficult at times.
Well, just like anything traumatic in life, in war or not, I mean, it's
Sure.
difficult to talk about.
Sure.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of things.
I'm sure people that survive a tornado or a shipwreck or a plane crash, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Now, have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD, or?
Yeah. I guess that was the conclusion that they came to. They tried to drug me up, and that didn't work, so I just flushed them and got a mouthful of life and went on.
I know you said that there was pretty sporadic and no heavy engagements, but is there any other stories that maybe you were thinking about before today that maybe you wanted to tell me? I mean, it doesn't have to be gory. I mean, just anything else that might have happened, or just the personal side of what you experienced. I mean, we've got just a couple more minutes left. Is there anything else that comes to mind maybe that? I know some of what you said was pretty tough to recount, but and I'm not going to sit here and drag things out of you, but you know, I'm really after that personal side of what happened to you guys.
Being one of the little guys, even though I was artillery and attached out to the infantry, would come across a hole in the ground while the company commander would look for a little guy to go in the hole. And one of the holes I went into turned out to be a vent shaft that when I got down to the main portion of the cave or tunnel, it was like a 3-table operating room, complete with generators and, I mean, everything. So they had their facilities there. And I understand later in years, the Ho Chi Minh Trail up along the DMZ where we were working, they had miles of that covered with a bamboo canopy so that they could move their vehicles back and forth, supply vehicles and stuff, without being detected. They were pretty ingenious, pretty divisive little guys, tough warriors.
Did you ever get around any of that medical thing, or did you get around the medevacs at all, or anybody getting lifted out or wounded or anything like that?
No, not really.
You weren't really involved with it?
No. if something like that, if we did have to medevac somebody out, I was usually several hundred yards away in another location, other than in the main area of the company CP, where the medics and all were taking care of the wounded people. I never really saw terrible blood.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
In Marine Corps training, did they talk about Iwo Jima or the Chosin Reservoir? And
Oh,
does that
yeah.
have a part of your molding and training as far as the Marine?
The Marines traditionally train and instill Marine Corps history in you. The Iwo Jima, Kwajalein, Frozen Chosin, you're indoctrinated into all of it. The Battle of Belleau Woods in World War I. I mean, they take you through the history of the Corps and drive that into you to, I guess, instill in you the kind of Marine that they expect you to be. You know, you have a long heritage, a glorious past. We expect nothing less from the present, you know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to incorporate even some of my documentaries with the Marine Corps that they've seen, hearing it from the Marines, the World War II guys that are still alive, the Korean War vets, and but anyways, that's another whole thing. But I'm always intrigued by the history of the Marine Corps, and when you're actually in a situation, how much that plays a part of what you're doing at the time. You know.
Every year at the Marine Corps birthday, the guys down at work get a history lesson. the 1776 Tons Tavern, the first recruiting station in Philadelphia, to enlist people. Probably half of the Marine Corps at that time were taken out of naval brigs because they needed somebody rough and tough for a boarding party to go from ship to ship, you know. So, yeah, history is important to all Marines, I believe.
How long you guys been married?
25 years, something, yeah.
Is there things that she didn't understand about you as far as Vietnam maybe she understands today, or?
Oh, I'm sure she had no clue when we first got married.
Does that have a part of your marriage? I mean, is that?
Yeah. It was probably her reaction to my actions was probably one of the glues that are keeping us together. She was very supportive, which helped a great deal. Mm-hmm.
You know, just being a Christian, you know, believing in God now, I mean, serving the Lord and all that, how does that put Vietnam in perspective? Does it help? I mean, does it, about life, death, I mean, how does all that play out?
Yeah. I don't know that
Can you really understand war, even as a Christian? I mean, why people die and why things happen? I mean, is that something
I don't
that we're
think my
supposed to-
Christianity has any real bearing. I'm too much a warrior. I believe that war is not murder. Is war necessary? I believe in some cases it is. Shoot, they had armies and soldiers in biblical times, and wars and conflicts, and so.
It goes way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it a little easier to forgive myself, I think, being a Christian and knowing that in some circumstances it is justified. So.
I don't think I've ever asked this question, so I'm going to ask you this question. Do you think God is an American God?
I think God is a human God. I believe he looks on America Yes. The same as Great Britain, same as China, same as Russia. I believe God is a world God, not a worldly God, but a world God, yes.
I talked to a German who fought on D-Day in Omaha Beach, and I asked him what he thought when he saw 6,000 ships coming. He said he's prayed. He prayed a Christian prayer. And I'm thinking, here's a German killing Americans praying a Christian prayer. Here are Americans praying, I mean, it's like, it almost gets confusing.
It has nothing to do with Christianity. It has to do with politics. Wars have always had to do with politics, except the religious wars of the Renaissance. and there it was still politics, not Christianity. So, yeah, I don't think being a Christian or not being a Christian, well, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I think I know what you're saying. I do. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see German Christians praying to the same God to keep them alive or to help them win or to, of course, God won't take sides, That's man's business, and he'll leave us to that. He give us that choice. So it's up to us to make the best choices we can, the best decisions we can, and live a Christian life as best we can.
Ira, what do you want your family or people to remember about you someday when you're gone?
He used to be much taller and more handsome. Just at all the mistakes I've ever made, I tried to live life with honor. Always successful? No. Always trying? Yes.
Last question, what should our country remember about Vietnam?
It doesn't matter how right or wrong you think the war is. Your representatives over there fighting it need your support. I think that would be the one big thing that I would want people to realize and understand.
Good.
Okay.
One more thing. At the end of my interviews, you know that I ask for a salute into the camera. When I ask you, can you do it from where your seat's there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ira, right into the camera. Go ahead. Excellent.